So before we get into really your life, I'm curious because, obviously this is a unique situation. You both wrote the book, but it is your life up on screen. Can you talk a little bit about the process, just starting when they contacted you, said they wanted to adapt it, how much involvement you wanted, etc.?
How much time we got?
We got time.
Before it reached the point where it started to move forward and get on the screen, we went through 3 other production companies, one of which was the group that made the Maze Runner movies. They had the option to this story for 18 months, and they had 12 months in which they had to move it forward towards development, or else I got my rights back. Well, in a nutshell, they didn't do anything with it. So I got the book back, and went through 2 other companies, one of which said they were going to try to get Will Smith involved, and they didn't do anything. So we sat on it for several more months, and then I got a call from these 2 Jewish boys. And I emphasize Jewish for a reason. I'll explain it in a minute. One of them called me while I was traveling across country and asked me if anyone had written a screenplay for this story. I said no. He said, me and my writing partner would like to write a screenplay for it. I said, what have you done? He said, nothing. I said, okay. To fast forward, we agreed that he and his partner could write the screenplay, and I would retain total control over that screenplay, and they couldn't do anything with it unless I gave the okay. He agreed to that. Signed a contract to that effect. His name is Charlie Wachtell and David Rabinowitz, 2 Jewish boys, young men. The reason why I emphasize the Jewish boy aspect of it is because that's what David Duke referred to them as. When he learned that the story was going to hit the screen, he referred to them as those 2 Jewish boys, and he was very critical of it. They wrote the screenplay. It went through 5 versions before I approved it, 4 versions before I approved the 5th. One of the versions, I think it was the second one, they had a love interest in there, which you saw as Patrice Dumas, but they had a scene in it in which John David as me was under the bed covers with her. They were kissing and talking. It was a very tastefully done love scene. And as I read that, I couldn't detach myself from the fact that that's me. I said, yeah. I said, take it out. So they said, we got to have a love scene in it. I said, I don't want to be portrayed like that. So they reluctantly took it out, and it turned out when I read the next version, even I knew you have to have that love scene in there. I told them, make my interest a dog. I've seen cop movies where they have a dog, and the dog is their companion. Put a dog in there. I had a German Shepherd and Collie growing up, and they wrote a dog in. I read it. I said, that ain't going to work. Put the love scene back in. So the 5th version I approved. He took it to Sean Reddick at QC Entertainment at the time. Sean Reddick and his partner, Ray Mansfield, Sean McKittrick, they basically met with me. We agreed to move this thing forward. Sean took it to Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele read it, contacted Spike. Jordan was originally going to produce and direct it. He decided he wasn't the man to direct it. He was just going to produce. And he then took it to Spike Lee. Spike asked him, is this story true? Jordan said it is. Spike said, I'm in. And that's the result.
In the back of your mind, was there kind of a wish of somebody like Spike Lee? Did you have a director in mind, Paul?
I had no one in mind because you have to understand, I never expected any of this to happen. I simply had a unique story that I thought needed to be told. I wanted to tell it. after 40 plus years. And all I wanted to do was write my story. And lo and behold, it's gotten this far.
And then on the same note, I was curious if there was somebody you want to play, when you're seeing yourself on page.
Absolutely.
Especially the love scene.
Believe it or not, I wanted Denzel Washington. He is one of my favorite actors. His face is, the man is good. And I said Denzel Washington when I was asked that question by one of the production teams. But Denzel is like 63, I'm 65. No way that Denzel Washington, even with makeup, can pass for 25-year-old me, which is when this happened. So my second choice, believe it or not, was Michael B. Jordan. I like Michael B. Jordan's work. And that's what I was rooting for. And one day I get a phone call and say, John David Washington is going to play you. I said, who's he? I didn't know Denzel had a son. And I found out. I watched Ballers after I found out, and I was sold on him from that point on. So I'm very pleased with his portrayal. He is a wonderful young man. He's very polite, very respectful, very well-mannered. His mom and dad did an excellent job with him, and I tell him that quite often when we see each other.
Were you on set? Were there times where you were on set helping with accuracy, or were you kind of separated from the production?
No. The focus people brought my wife and I to Brooklyn when the cast read-through, the very first time we cast them together. And I told them my story. They had not heard of it before. I told them the story. They had a lot of questions. Spike had some questions. And we sat through the cast read-through. My wife and I looking at each other and saying, can you believe this? We're here, going through this. We're just two kids from El Paso, Texas, that's all. We never expected anything like this. And it was a very surreal moment. It's still a surreal moment. And we stayed there for about 6 or so hours, 8 hours, and got on the plane and came back home.
There's so we could talk about, obviously some pieces have to be traumatized to shift around in the story. And I'm curious about some of them. I think the first for me is in the movie he's called Flip, and in the book he's called Chuck, and it's a fake name, right? So to hide his identity. But was he Jewish?
No.
And was there kind of an element, was there any Jewish element to the police department? Was that on your mind at the time at all too? Or is it?
That character was made Jewish because of the two writers. When they approached me about it, they said, I said, what's your angle to my story? They said, we're Jewish. We would like to write the Chuck character as a Jew to add tension to the plot when he's in the room with these Klansmen. I thought about it. I said, I never even thought about that. I said, I like it, run with it. And you saw the result. And I might add, one of the things that pleases me about this story with these two young men is that they had never done anything in their professional life like this. They were bold enough to approach me and ask for an opportunity. I gave them the opportunity. And as a result, they're now up for Writers Guild Award. They hopefully, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed, will be up for an Academy Award for screenwriting, adapted screenplay. And all the recognition that's come their way is well deserved in their part for having that boldness. They had a dream, they saw an opportunity, they seized it. And I'm glad to play a small part in it. And right now, these two young men are a couple of hot items in Hollywood, from what I'm hearing.
Well, one of the great things they do is they kind of balance the seriousness of the topic with some humor in the way it's projected. I was curious, was there any level of humor, when it was going on? Was these things of hanging up the phone on David Duke and somebody cracking up at what happened? Is there any accuracy to that?
It was about 2 or 3 times funnier than what you saw. And I mean that in all honesty. Sergeant Trapp, he's deceased now. He passed away in '81 from leukemia. Sergeant Trapp, on many days, would sit at his desk listening to me on the phone, pretending to be a white supremacist, talking to David Duke and the other Klans people, and he would literally be falling out his chair laughing so hard he would lose his breath and would run out of the room to regroup himself, come back in. I'm still on the phone pretending to be a white supremacist. He'd look at me and he'd bust out laughing again and run out of the room. And I'd start laughing at his antics, laughing at me. It was a lot funnier than what you saw depicted. It's not, there's no shame when you watch this movie, ladies and gentlemen, in laughing at the funny scene, because it actually happened. It actually happened. As serious as this subject was, there was so much hilarity to it because, let's face it, the whole concept is unbelievable. And the fact that David Duke, who at the time had a master's degree in political science, had served, or was soon going to serve a term in the Louisiana House of Representatives about 2 years after his investigation. He had political aspirations. The very fact that this man, who thought he was above and beyond everything else and who viewed people like me as an ape or chimpanzee, and who viewed Jews as such derogatory references, the fact that he was being made such a fool of, and not once did he pick up on it. Not once. And when he made his statement about how you can tell when you're talking to black people by the way they pronounce the English language, how they say "ara" instead of "r," I almost lost it myself. So there is no shame in laughing at the funny parts of this movie, even though the subject matter is deadly serious. And these guys were very intent in their aim and their goal and their ideology. We never lost sight of that fact. But we had a lot of fun doing this. We really did.
I'm curious, there's an element of racism in the police department as well, too. I'm curious how accurate that was, and kind of dovetailed with that, the dancing around it that is in the interview when you got the job, that scene earlier on.
The interview scene with me applying for the job actually happened. It was the white captain of Uniform Patrol Division, the assistant chief white of Personnel Matters, and the black gentleman represented the city personnel manager in Colorado Springs at the time. His name is or was, I don't know if he's still alive, James Woods. They actually asked me those questions. They asked me a few others too. But those questions were actually asked in my interview at the age of 19, joining the police department. You talked about the timeline. I joined the police department at the age of 19 in the police cadet program. I did not join as a patrolman as portrayed in the movie. Spike toyed with the timeline to put things together. But I was 19 when I joined. I had to go through an interview. The cadet program, ladies and gentlemen, was for high school graduates between the ages of 17 and 19 who aspired to be cops. And you took the same tests to get on the job as actual police officers, but you were not an officer. You did civilian support jobs around the department. You wore a brown uniform. You had a badge just like theirs that said cadet, where theirs said patrolman or detective. And you did civilian support jobs, all learning how the business worked. You also went through the police academy as a cadet. And when you turned 21, they changed your brown uniform to a blue. You got your gun. You got all the accoutrements that come with it. You were put in the field training program for anywhere from 4 to 6 months, depending on how you progressed. And then you were off on your own. That was the process I went through to become a police officer. So at the age of 19, I was asked all these questions about, do you drink, do you womanize, how would you feel if someone called you a nigger, how would you respond? Questions that you can't ask today in a job interview, probably shouldn't have been. But I was 19 years old, I didn't know how things worked, and we saw it actually happen.
I'm curious, did you do karate?
You know, that's kind of interesting, believe it or not. I was a karate instructor when I was a teenager at the University of Texas El Paso Karate Club. And when I saw John David doing those little moves, I kind of laughed. I said, I wonder if they found out about my past. They didn't know anything about it. They still don't, because I haven't told anyone. But I actually studied karate in high school. I was an instructor for a period of time before I left El Paso. And I asked John David what that was all about. He said he was just trying to relieve some frustration. And it was a spontaneous move. It wasn't written in the script.
How long was the investigation?
The total investigation was about 9.5 months. The undercover phase of it was about 7 months. It began in October of 1978 and it ended around April of 79.
Do you sell the membership card?
Got it on me right now?
Do you carry it always?
I have carried this card with me since I got it in the mail in January of 79. I'm often asked, why do you carry it? 2 reasons. One, it's a memento of my career, a very unique memento of my career. 2, if I'm ever in a fatal car crash, some poor cop's going to come up on my neck and going to find it, and he's going to freak out.
We get this great moment of gratification kind of close to the end, wrapping up the David Duke story where he tells him on the phone. Did you have that in real life? That I gotta ask.
As far as that scene where John David reveals who he is, that he's Ron Stallworth, that part did not happen. The conversation itself happened. Excuse me. The conversation itself did take place. Following David Duke's visit to Colorado Springs, where I was assigned to be his bodyguard, I waited a day, maybe 2 days later. I called him up. I wanted to see if he had any clue that his bodyguard was the Ron Stallworth that he talked to on the phone, one of his Klansmen. So I called him up. And I said, Mr. Duke, I'm so honored that you came to Colorado Springs. I enjoyed basking in your presence. He loved flattery, by the way. Remind me of anyone in Washington. I said, I'm so honored, and I just wanted you to know that. And I wish we could have spent more time so I could have learned from you about being a better Klansman, and I just wanted to express that to you. He thanked me profusely, and then I said, did anything interesting happen while you were in Colorado Springs? How did you enjoy our city? He said, oh, I had an encounter with a digger cop. I said, really, what happened? He proceeded to tell me about the photograph, the arm on the shoulder, the photo that was taken. That actually happened, by the way. He proceeded to tell me about that incident and how that nigger cop, used his word, said he was going to throw him in prison for 5 years if he touched him. And I said, no. He said that? He said, yes. I said, those doggone niggers, somebody needs to do something to put them in this place. Da-da-da-da-da. I went on for the longest time egging him on, and he was responding in kind. He never used the N-word in public. On the phone, he threw it around like a baseball, and I flipped it right back at him. And after I had egged him on for a while, and I might add, this was one of the times when the sergeant was falling out of his chair laughing. After I had egged him on for a while, I said, well, Mr. Duke, I have to go. I just wanted you to know how honored I was to meet you. He said, well, the pleasure was all mine. He hung up, and that's when I realized he never figured out who Ron Stallworth was in terms of his bodyguard versus his clan.
I can only imagine the toll it takes on you to be around that, to be on the phone with him that much, to be embedded in the investigation. Do you feel like at any point you lost a little bit of humanity? Do you feel like it changed your outlook on him?
No, because for every David Duke that's out there, there's 1,000 or more that are not like that. White supremacists are an anomaly. They're staying in our world, in our universe. They are an anomaly. I never lost sight of the fact that there are decent human beings out there, and I was just interacting with one very minuscule section of the public that, in my opinion, doesn't deserve to be called human being. I've often been asked, how did you maintain your sanity when they were talking about you as a black man in negative terms? Keep in mind, they weren't talking about me, they were talking about blacks in general. They thought they were talking to a fellow white supremacist. And so we were communicating back and forth in that vein. I might add, many of you have probably seen newspaper articles or interviews where people try to say, well, he talked to David Duke in a white voice. He pretended to be white by talking white. I'm going to ask every one of you in this audience, what does a white man sound like versus a black man? Okay? I know what people generally think. There are some blacks who have certain characteristics in their speech pattern that talk a certain way. I used to, when I worked undercover, I would assume that type of persona. But in terms of everyday talk, when I was on the phone with David Duke, I was talking to him just as I'm talking to you right now. I was Ron Stallworth pretending to be a fellow white supremacist talking to the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. There was no white voice. Every reporter that has ever written that has demonstrated their incompetence by putting that statement, that phrase in there. I talk as if you were. So John David talked as John David pretending to be Ron Stallworth. He didn't put on a white voice.
So, but on that note, did you and Chuck have a similar voice?
Chuck's voice is totally different than mine, and you would recognize it if you heard it. That was one of the funny things about this investigation. Any normal person should have recognized that they were talking to two different people. White supremacists are not normal. They say we as black people have the brain capacity of apes and chimpanzees. Well, let me tell you, that actually goes in reverse.
I won't get into too much of the modern day climate, but I'm curious if you feel like racism has changed in some way. Do you feel like there's, I don't know if I feel like we've advanced, but do you feel like it's changed in some way?
Well, I thought it changed and that it had advanced up until January 20th, 2016 at 12 o'clock. I still have faith that we're on the positive track as a society, but there's no doubt in my mind that we've gone backwards and will continue to go backwards until such change back there takes place. A climate fomenting hatred, dissension, and racial prejudice, bigoted, biased racial prejudice has been allowed to occur in this country. And all the advances that have been gained, I think, have been slowed, not stopped, but slowed tremendously. The white supremacists feel they have a license to come out from the shadow. They feel like they have a voice back there right now. Sad to say, I believe they do. But I haven't lost my faith in humanity. We are a better society now than we were 40 years ago when I was dealing with David Duke and company. But we can't allow that progress to stop completely. We've got to keep pushing forward. And that's what I hope to do, and hope to capitalize on with the voice that I've been given as a result of this movie and my book.
I'm going to open it up to the audience in a second, but I'm curious what you feel like, you've accomplished so much with this investigation throughout your career. What do you feel like was the result you're proudest of from this investigation?
The result I'm proudest of, ladies and gentlemen, I've often been asked, well, what did you accomplish? You didn't arrest anybody, so what was the purpose of this? Think outside the box, which police departments, police officers tend to not do that. We judge success based on how many people were arrested, how much contraband was seized, how many stolen vehicles did you recover, this type of stuff. That's thinking within the box. This whole investigation was an outside-the-box thought process. It was an intelligence investigation, first of all, not a criminal one. Intelligence is totally different. You're trying to gather information as opposed to pursuing a criminal investigation for prosecution. If at any time we could have arrested these people, by the way, I could have arrested all of them for misdemeanor possession of firearms. There were no firearm permits back then. I could have arrested them for that because they openly carried, they bragged about it, and we knew about it. I chose not to effect those arrests because I wanted to catch them doing something bigger. I wanted a felony where I could really put them away. So I overlooked it. But outside the box thinking in an intelligence investigation like this, you're gathering information. In this case, who were the Klans people? What was their motivation, their objective? What intent, what aim did they have in terms of their presence in my city? And because they were soldiers stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, what, if anything, were they planning where Fort Carson was concerned, their military background and training was concerned? This is what we were looking at. What am I most proud of? We stopped 3 cross burnings, 2 of them directly. I know because I was invited to participate. Okay? The 3rd one they chose not to do because they did not have success in the previous 2. The tactic you saw where John David said send another car in, send another unit, and you saw police cars cruising through the dark, actually happened. Not exactly as depicted, but it actually happened. They would call me up, wanting to burn a cross, telling me where, when. I would tell them I couldn't because of some excuse. I couldn't participate in a crime, so I gave them an excuse why I couldn't be there. And then I would notify our police dispatcher, put extra police units in this area for a certain period of time. And because we didn't have cell phones at the time, I kept my fingers crossed hoping the tactic worked. On 2 occasions it did. The Klans people drove to the location. They would see a police car coming north, one going south, one going east, another going west, and they would chicken out because there was too much of a police presence. We did that twice. The 3rd time they talked about doing it and they thought about the previous 2 and said, this is not good. So we prevented 3 cross burnings. For those of you who aren't aware of it, a cross burning is a domestic act of terrorism. It has been classified as such dating back to the 19th century when Congress held hearings on the Ku Klux Klan. We prevented 3 domestic acts of terrorism in Colorado Springs. No one ever had to wake up or go to bed with the sight of a cross burning in the distance. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the fact that we identified 2 top security clearance personnel at NORAD, North American Air Defense Command. Okay? Very proud of that. Pentagon was informed of it. Some general gave the order to the colonel, deputy commander at NORAD to kick those guys out of their job. And by the end of business, the day I met with them, they were gone. I was told they were going to be shipped to the North Pole. And when I asked, what is the North Pole? Do we have a military base there? All they would tell me is that we have a base that's pretty clear, doggone close to it, and we call it the North Pole. So that's all I can tell you on that, but they kicked them out. They weren't going to have any of that activity in the Army at that time. And I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to bring that to light. I'm proud of the fact that we identified the white supremacy connection in the state of Colorado. Prior to that time, we didn't know any of the links that existed. As a result of my investigation, we were able to establish those links. So, we accomplished a lot, even though nobody was arrested. And more importantly, I was able to make a fool out of David Deuce.
I'm going to open up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? I'll start right here.
So, first of all, thank you for sharing your amazing story and for being here today to this interest of all
Thank you.
research. I'm curious to know what happened after. Was it really true, as depicted in the film, that they said the investigation was closed and destroyed files, and what happened to your career after that?
Yes.
So the question, just for the back of the audience, was what happened after the truth? They destroyed the files and closed the investigation, and then what happened with the rest of your career?
Part of the truth. The files were not destroyed. A report here and a report there was shredded by me because I was ordered by my chief to destroy the files. The investigation ended, ladies and gentlemen, because I got a call one day from Walter Breachway in my bookies, Ken Odell. Ken Odell called me, the chapter president, one day and said that he was getting out of the Army and they needed new blood in the leadership of the Klan, the local Klan, and that he had put it to a vote. It had been unanimous. They wanted Ron Stallworth to become the chapter president of the Colorado Springs Ku Klux Klan. Obviously, I couldn't assume that role. But when I went and told the chief about this new development, the chief said, "We've gone too far, shut it down." He said, "I want you to change the P.O. box, the undercover P.O. box. I want you to change the undercover phone line. I don't want you going to any more meetings, you or Chuck." And he said, "I want Ron BlacKkKlansman to disappear." I argued as vigorously as I could with the chief. He was not going to be moved. I saluted. I went back to my office in the presence of my sergeant, Sergeant Trapp. I tore a report up here, I tore a report up there. And when he went out of the office, I grabbed 2 notebooks about 2.5 inches thick that had the entire investigation file in there. And I tucked them under my arm, I walked out, put them in my car, and drove home. Those files remain with me to this day, and it's from those files, the official police reports that I wrote in my book. That's why I know about the accuracy when people say it's a lie and all that. No, I've got the official police report, and it was contained, the book was written based on the report. I knew what I was doing was wrong. It was morally wrong, it was ethically wrong, and I knew that I could be fired if the department found out about it. But it was a chance I was willing to take, because I knew that this investigation was unique. I knew in my own mind that nothing like this had happened before, and that if I didn't have those notebooks, no one would ever believe me if I told them it was true. I wouldn't have this KKK membership card on me right now if I had destroyed it. I also have a certificate of membership signed by David Duke, certifying me as one of his knights of the Ku Klux Klan. So I knew what I was doing. I was willing to take the risk. I took the risk. 40 years later, here we are.
Over here?
Thank you very much for this. This has been very entertaining.
Thank you.
Did you stay a cop in Colorado Springs? And you were just there because you grew up in Colorado Springs?
Oh, I grew up in
Just for the back.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you stay a cop in Colorado Springs, and were you there just because you grew up there?
No, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, with my lovely bride sitting over here, Mrs. BlacKkKlansman. That's Patsy. We grew up in El Paso, Texas. We graduated from high school together in '71, and we went about our lives. She went in one direction, I went in another. We came together 40 years later, and we got married nearly 2 years ago, this coming May. I I remained a Colorado Springs cop for a year after this. I was assigned to the Attorney General's Organized Crime Strike Force, did an undercover investigation up in the heart of the black community of Denver. And when that investigation ended, while that investigation was going on, I applied for other jobs because you have to understand, when you read my book, and I hope you all will read it, when you read my book, you will learn that my goal in terms of my law enforcement career was to be an undercover cop. I didn't want to wear a uniform. I don't like uniforms. I just don't like them. I don't have anything against them other than the fact that you have to go a certain way when you're in a uniform and you can't deviate from that. In undercover work, you have the freedom to look like I do. This is how I normally am. You have the freedom to look this way. You have the freedom to go and mix and mingle in crowds of people, and no one around you will know who or what you are. And that's what I always wanted for my career. And because I couldn't do that in Colorado Springs, I had a lieutenant and a sergeant who were determined to keep me in a uniform. I went job hunting. And after a year, I moved to Arizona and worked, did undercover work for a criminal intelligence agency down there. 2 years later, I was hired by the Wyoming Attorney General's Division of Criminal Investigation, and I worked narcotics in the state of Wyoming. That's another story to be continued in and of itself. I was the only black cop in the entire state of Wyoming in the 4 years I worked there. And while I was in Wyoming, I was recruited by the Utah Department of Public Safety to work narcotics for them. It took 2 years, but they finally were able to pull me into Utah, and I went there and worked 20 years. That's where my pension comes from. It's from the state of Utah. I had a 32-year career total.
Hello, Mr. Stallworth.
Hello.
Story. With the resurrection of white supremacy in this country and the subsequent embarrassment of someone like David, are you concerned for your personal safety?
So the question was, with the resurrection of the white supremacist movement and with David Duke, are you concerned for your personal safety?
No more so than anybody else. The people I worry about are the ones that you will never see, but will show up at your door or outside your house and start shooting. Can't defend against that. The guys who talk about what they're going to do and whatnot, relatively harmless, because they're not. A smart crook is not going to advertise that they're about to break the law. And when I was undercover, I took the necessary precautions that I had to. I would get off work at midnight sometimes, and I would take a circuitous route to my apartment. I was still single at the time when I first started working narcotics. I would take a circuitous route to get to my apartment, going way out the way before finally arriving, because I was checking to see if I was being tailed. I don't worry about that any more today than I did when I was actively on the job. What I am concerned about is my wife. And all I know is that they can mess with me all they want. Leave her alone. Leave her alone. Because that's when the animal in me will come out. Okay, so no, I don't worry about my personal safety. Just my wife's safety is of paramount importance to me.
Back in the aisle.
Hi. So you said the photo actually happened. Do you still have the Polaroid?
So the question is, the photo actually happened, do you still have the Polaroid?
Spike told me 2 nights ago, the Golden Globe after party, if I had that photo, I could have done wonders with it. You would be seeing promotional campaigns about the movie with that photo right now, I guarantee it. I lost that photo years ago.
And I have a follow-up. You said that there was a undercover PO box, and I was wondering when you applied for the membership, after you had already used your real name, did you actually use your real address like in the movie, or did you use an undercover like PO box like it is?
No, when you work undercover, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. question is, did you use your real address? Because you had actually used your real name.
Yeah, the real name, by the way, was a mistake. I hadn't planned on that.
But in the book, you write a letter, right? It's not just calling him up.
No, and what actually happened, ladies and gentlemen, was I wrote the letter first. I saw the ad in the newspaper, Ku Klux Klan for information in the P.O. box. So I wrote a little letter to the P.O. box. And in that letter, I said, I'm a pure area white man. I hate sticks, chinks, Jews, Japs, and anybody else that isn't pure area white like me. And I want to do something to deal with this. And I signed Ron Stallworth. I had worked undercover up to that time about 3 years. I knew better. Why did I sign my real name? All I can tell you is I had a brain cramp that day. I didn't think about it, and I didn't realize I signed the real name until about a week later, when I get a phone call in my office on the undercover phone line. Only people who we gave that number out to and we were doing undercover deals with called that number. I answered the phone, the voice said, "Hi, may I speak to Ron Stallworth?" And I'm thinking, who the hell is calling me on the undercover phone line? That's when I realized I had given my real name in that letter. So from that moment on, I was Ron Stallworth throughout the whole investigation. I couldn't change up on it. And so that happened by accident. The P.O. box was changed. We corresponded with him twice, I think, through the P.O. box. Everything else was done by phone. And it was done under the guise of Ron Stallworth. That's why I had to get Chuck to pose as me for face-to-face meetings. I orchestrated things, I guided everything, directed everything. I was the composer. But when we called a face-to-face meeting, I had to send a white person in for obvious reasons. So the challenge all the way through this investigation for me was to make sure that Chuck knew what I had said on the phone, and that I in turn knew what Chuck was saying in person, because I would wire him up for sound and I'd be in the car listening. We had to piggyback each other and never ever deviate from what one had said at one time versus another. And that's why this investigation was so unique. Chuck's voice is distinctly different than mine, and they never picked up on the fact that two people were talking. There was one instance, displayed in the movie, by the way, where John David called and Walter Breachway, who in reality was Ken Odell, chapter president, he asked John David, he said, "What's wrong with your voice? You sound different." That actually happened. Chuck had gone to a meeting that I had set up. He was there for about an hour, hour and a half. During that meeting, Ken Odell showed him his 13 guns and bragged about how he carried them all the time and how he wanted to use them on niggers and so forth. And Chuck left the meeting. Something was said that I wanted to follow up on. So I waited an hour, figuring to give him a little time to pass. Something was said, I called back to Ken Odell's house. And the minute he picked up the phone and heard my voice, he said, "You sound different, what's the matter?" And I said, "I have a sinus infection." He said, "Oh, I get those all the time. Here's what you need to do." And he prescribed a remedy for me. That's the only time that I was ever challenged as to my identity. They're a bunch of idiots.
Well, we have time for one more. We'll go right here.
At the end of the movie, Flip is there at the crossbreeding, and so he raises his mask, and did that actually happen? Was he actually there undercover with him on?
No.
So the question was Chuck there at the end of the cross burning?
No. That scene was written into the movie. Keep in mind, I said during the entire investigation, no cross was ever burned in Colorado Springs. Now, let me add something to that statement. While the investigation was active, no cross was ever burned. We prevented through cross burning. On the day that my chief told me to shut the investigation down, he ordered me not to answer the phone, not to write correspond anymore to the P.O. box and don't go to any more meetings with him. As I was in my office carrying reports up, a report here, a report there, the undercover phone line rang. And it rang. And it rang, and it rang. I didn't answer it. About 3 hours, 4 hours later, a cross was burned for the first time in Colorado Springs, outside of a black nightclub. We had 2 black nightclubs, and in this particular one, the cross was burning. I am convinced to this day that that phone call was the Klan calling me up, inviting me to participate in another cross burning, and because I could not answer the phone, I did not know where or when or what the plan was, and I couldn't thwart it. But that's the only time the Klan burned the cross, and it occurred after my investigation was officially over by a few hours.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming and for sharing your story.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My pleasure. God bless you.